We're all looking for something to save our season. Is it Cole Palmer? Is it Bruno Fernandes? Is it five at the back? But what if I told you it is none of these things or even a combination of these things? It's about going back to three key FPL philosophies that can help get us through this really tough period. In this video, let's talk about these three philosophies. We'll also look at how the team is lining up in Game Week 23, and I'll share my thoughts on Game Week 24 and wildcarding. Welcome to my channel. I'm your host, Femi, and let's jump into it. Firstly, let's have a word on Crystal Palace. What is happening to this respected football club? It's astonishing, actually. The manager said in the last press conference, Oliver Glasner, that he's going to resign at the end of the season. I did mention in a recent video that this was one of the things that was hanging over Crystal Palace in terms of his departure, which has now been confirmed by himself and the team. They're selling Mark Gay, their best defender, their captain. They're selling their club captain in January, which is just absolutely ridiculous and rarely happens, to a leading title contender in Man City. And so he's gone. And then there's news this week, this morning, I'm recording this before the Bournemouth Brighton game, that their leading goal scorer, Mateta, is going to go potentially to Juventus. So you're losing your manager in the summer, you're losing your defender and captain now, and you're losing most likely in January your leading scorer and your top forward in Mateta. Like, Crystal Palace is in a world of hurt, and it does make us reevaluate their assets moving forward. I mean, how can you motivate the rest of the squad when the leader of the team in terms of the manager is leaving, and it's confirmed that with the players, the captain is leaving? Like, it's just a mess. So we'll have to see, because Munoz is was one of the better defender assets, and he's due to come back shortly. It's going to be a wait and see approach. I only have Henderson in my team from a goalkeeping perspective. So I'm not sure what you guys are doing with your Crystal Palace assets. Let me know if you're looking to pick them up or sell them completely. I know a lot of us had Gay, and he's going to City, so you do get an automatic upgrade there, because the City defense is losing two defenders right now with Garvidal and Diaz. So that's a good move from a short-term perspective for him to fill in the minutes there in the center back line there. But ultimately, let me know what you're doing with your City Palace assets. Now let's get back to the video and our three key FPL philosophies. So we all know that Chelsea has an amazing fixture run in Game Week 24, but what happens if their assets aren't going to save our season? We have Cole Palmer, who's done well in his limited minutes. He's, scored in his most recent game in this game week, had a penalty, but we all know he's not healthy. He's managing an injury, and we don't know if there's surgeries to come. But ultimately, with Chelsea having so many fixtures to come in different competitions, they're going to continue to manage him moving forward. Enzo Fernandez has scored 6 goals, which is a career high for him in the Premier League. But that's it. It's a career high. Is he going to continue to have this output? I know some of the data people are saying the stats are there. We'll see. It's a complete unknown. And then Trevor Chalobah, who was the second highest scoring defender in the Premier League this season, was on loan for most of the season last season at Crystal Palace. Will his minutes continue being high, or will there be some rotation risk there? And can we count on him to continue to do what he's been doing thus far this season? So ultimately, with those things in mind, we need to look at the risks to reward, and also how we set up our team in a way that protects us from the downside of these players not performing. Because if we rush to transfer them in and they don't perform, you're going to have buyer's remorse and think of, other players that you should have had in your squad ultimately. So I wanted to bring these three key tips that will help hopefully insulate you from any type of downside if we go to Chelsea assets right away or in Game Week 24. And also, open your minds to different considerations and possibilities that could potentially help you, navigate, which has been a tough season thus far. So the first one is scoring midfielders are absolutely vital and key. So for me, I have had Rodgers in my squad since Game Week 10, and he's had 15 pointers. Imagine if I were to have captained him. The amount of points that Rodgers got if I would have captained him is as much as some people have scored this game week, and so ultimately that's the risk and the reward with high scoring midfielders is, yes, there's lots of ones and twos, but when they hit and when he hits, it's usually a brace. That's worth it. And those points over time. And if they're, you take a risk in captaincy and going against Haaland, which I also mentioned in my last video as something that you can do. from time to time can really, really pay off. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is like, ultimately, it's just one player, right? When a player blanks, there's this view, even if your captain blanks, that your game week is over, but there's still 9 players to go. And I'm not counting the goalkeeper because I don't expect clean sheets from my goalkeeper. I expect usually 2 to 3 points. That's how I play the game. Of course, obviously, we want the clean sheets, but it's not a given how many times they get wiped out because, games are going extra time. There's like 5, 7, 8 minutes of added time nowadays. So that negates things from that perspective. So ultimately, you still have 9 other players to get points from, right? For me, I think I've been a little bit unlucky in the sense that my midfield hasn't returned in the last 2 game weeks, a midfield that consists of Foden, Rice, Saka, and Rodgers. So sometimes there's just this variance that we have to live with and move forward with. But ultimately, my recommendation would be to look at your midfield, look at, that's where the most points come from your team, and analyze, are there better midfielders from a goal scoring perspective that I can put in? We know about Bruno Fernandes, and we'll get to him later, to help make the team better. Because right now, Foden isn't cutting it with 6 blanks in a row. A great fixture to come. But ultimately, those goal scoring mids are what we love in FPL and what really give us the most opportunity to get bonus points and rise up the ranks. But there's another thing, and it's also very important to take a consideration on, and it's my point number 2, and it's the bench. The bench and bench priorities. When I did a video on this with Rice's 17-pointer, this is what I was talking about, because there's just so many opportunities here, and I get it wrong. I got it wrong this week. I benched Chalobah as his 8-pointer. It was a little bit of a 50-50 because I thought that Chelsea would concede, and I had Collins. I have Collins also in my FPL squads, so I only wanted to start one of the 2. But ultimately, it happens so much. It's the most low-hanging fruit. Like, just sort out your bench order. Make sure you take the time to really identify who, based on whether the price of their asset, the fixture, just your gut intuition, if they're going to score or not, because you're leaving points hanging there. And, ultimately that is going to come back to bite you. But the thing is like, for me, with the Collins Chalobah decision, I could live with the upside that Chalobah provided. Even though I didn't start him, because I made that decision. I rationalized it in my head. So just thinking through your options is the most important thing, but don't make silly bench mistakes. Like I see some people who have like a Thiago who not starting, like he's on penalties. So if he starts and scores, most likely he'll get the bonus points, and it's just so risky. Look at him when he played Everton. No one thought he was going to get a hat trick. Some people rested him or thought he wouldn't score. I did. Thought he wasn't going to score, and he did. Scored 3 times, right? So don't take silly risks like that. Make sure you're always optimizing your bench, and you want to make sure you can nail this every time, because at the end of the day, these are free points that are just sitting because you didn't make the right decision. And now let's get into the last final tip, and which is, don't chase points or pretend that they aren't there. Finally, I think this is the most common one outside of the first 2. It's point chasing. We all do this. I did it with Foden. He's had 6 blanks in a row, and I tried to get him, in the midst of him hauling, and I missed his hauls. And so it's just like a thing that happens every time. You see the top scorer of the game week, and everyone rushes to get him in. It's sort of like a curse at this point in time that sometimes it really happens and it bites you in the butt. And I honestly think it's a really bad way to play. The reason why my rank, in top 5K is this high this far this season is because I've really stopped doing this, is chasing points and going after those hauls. And it can manifest itself in a variety of different ways. I think one common way is, doing like sideways transfers, or feeling that a player will do better even though the dynamics of the team have changed. A good example of this was Cunha. When people picked Cunha up when Bruno Fernandes got hurt a few game weeks ago, it was a strange thing to me, because I'm like, Bruno is the offense of that attack. And when you look at his stats, and here they are on the screen here, he's been one of the best Premier League midfielders with in terms of output and on all these metrics, right? So the idea that a lot of people had was, oh, Bruno's out, so now Cunha's status gets elevated, but Bruno's out. And that means that, the team can't attack as well, right? because he's so central, as you can see by these statistics. So ultimately, that was a weird one. People went captain, and it's not bad to try these things. Like, I'm playing the game this year, but definitely going against Haaland from time to time. But Cunha was just a bad pick from that perspective of, you thought he was going to replace all of Bruno's output. That wasn't a good pick. Another example is the whole Szoboszlai. There's so many people on X that love him. I don't get it. He hasn't returned. This is points chasing in the pretending that points are going to be there based on the role of the team. He's on penalties, yes, and that can happen. He can miss a penalty, but look at what he's done even prior to that. Prior to that, he wasn't really putting up much points, right? And FPL is a game of points. So you have a 6.6 million asset who's not putting up points. And essentially, that's just a wasted spot in your team. So you could think of, like, if you went to downgrade him, and I know he's the hot man at the moment, but I also did a video on him recently too, a little while back, in James Garner, and look at what he's been able to do. Like, he's been able to step up his game and actually put up points. So those are the two forms of point chasing that happen. Assets that you think will do better because the team has changed, but maybe they won't. And then assets you just blindly follow because you think they have tons of routes to points, but they have never shown you that they've been able to get FPL points. So Szoboszlai is a great player, but a bad FPL asset. So those are the types of ones that you need to consider and get them out of your squad. So I hope that helped. I hope that helped you look at how you can analyze your squad and make the most of it, because every spot matters, every spot counts, and you need to get the maximum value of every spot for your FPL points every game week. Now, let's take a look at my review of my Game Week 22 team. Okay, this is going to be quick. Game Week 22 was a rough one. I finished on 31 points. I don't have any players in the last fixture, Bournemouth versus Brighton. So let's run through the team. Henderson, 2-pointer. Crystal Palace, like I mentioned at the outset, is in a world of trouble. I'm not sure where we go from here, and potentially we'll talk a little bit about Wildcard in 24 a little bit later. Ballard had 4 points. He's been a consistent player, especially at home, so I'm very happy. Got DEFCON there. Collins, 1-pointer. Ho-hum there. We move on. And then Gabriel, the essential asset in FPL right now, 8-pointer. Arsenal wasn't troubled at all in that Nottingham Forest game. In the midfield, we've already talked about it. None of the midfield got returns. I went Rodgers as a differential captain as the last minute switch there, and I was happy with that in the sense that he had a lot of opportunities but didn't get anything. On another day, they go through, and another day I have a massive green arrow because of that, but it wasn't to be. We have Rice and Saka, who did not start that game, and a lot of people are clamoring for him to be exited from the team. We're going to wait and see, especially with Manchester United at home next for both Rice and Saka. And then Foden, 6 blanks in a row. He is the priority transfer out. We'll take a look at what that looks like potentially in a few weeks. And then Bowen, 3-pointer. He's not doing much. Getting DEFCON, surprisingly, as a forward. Not for him, but just in general, because forwards typically don't get DEFCON. Calvert-Lewin with 2 points there. And then Haaland, a man who's, missing form right now with the 2-pointers. And then I have Chalobah with the 8 points on my bench and 2 injured players one in Diaz, who's injured, and one in Malin, who got transferred to Roma. So that's why Wildcard 24 is one of the hottest topics for me. Now, let's go talk about how the team is lining up for 23 and my thoughts on wildcarding in Game Week 24. So this is how the team lines up in Game Week 23. So ultimately, when we look at the team, it doesn't look any dissimilar from what I showed you of the team that finished Game Week 22. Henderson in goal, Ballard in a good fixture away to West Ham, Collins at home in a nice fixture against Forest, and Gabriel at home against Man United. All defenders have great fixtures. Midfielder, it gets a little bit more muddled with Rodgers away to Newcastle, usually a tough place to go. Rice and Saka I'm okay with at home in what is really a must-win game for Arsenal to continue the title challenge. And then Foden with a solid fixture at Wolves at home, even though that Wolves have been doing better. It's still Wolves. They're still bottom of the table. And then Bowen, a decent fixture. Sunderland's better at home. And then Calvert-Lewin away, and Haaland captain choice right now with the armband at home against Wolves. But Game Week 24, let's talk about the wild card, because, I'm trying to get to 24 without using transfers, because ultimately whole view has been the next couple of fixtures aren't that great for so many teams. And if the Chelsea assets don't perform, there's nothing really to jump to in 24 because, you know, they're still, they're the only team that has like a really significant fixture run. I have strong assets in teams that are highest, that are scoring a lot in the Premier League. So it's going to take a lot for me to adjust that. So we'll look potentially later in the week. I may do a wildcard video. I'm not sure yet of what that could potentially look like for 24. Yeah, this is what we have with the team. I have 2 free transfers, and so I may just wait this out because honestly, like outside of my bench being decimated with 2 players that aren't there, that's the biggest reason to potentially wildcard because I need more bench cover. There's too many fixtures. I'm not going to be able to, you know, survive should there be an injury or a minute's concern with someone in my starting, you know, 11. So that's the reason potentially to wildcard. But I do, you know, tend to like my team. It's not perfect, but it's hard to get all the best players that you want all the time. So that's my thoughts. Let me know what you're thinking of, you know, wildcard 24, what you would do differently with your squad. And if you like this video, please subscribe below, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.